think we are a long way from Simsbury, Connecticut. How many of you came to our early convergences, the first 6 or 7? Well, also, way to go to be in this field for that long and the sort of convening. Jumping geographies. Last week, I was at the second global summit in Asia, looking at gender lens investing in Asia. And it was incredibly powerful to be in a room of 50 people, but some seriously kick-ass women and men, looking at the field in Asia. And the email I got from the organizers, for those of you who don't know, Sasakawa Foundation, which is the kind of foreign-facing arm of the Nippon Foundation in Tokyo, has committed $100 million to gender lens investing in Southeast Asia. And so they were the folks who had brought this room together. And I got an email from the organizer saying, the thing I'm taking away from the day is the need for imagination. And it's kind of the big point I want to make here of where we are in the field. I think, as a lot of you know, I have this, like Jackie, an amazing opportunity to travel the world and talk about gender lens investing and see it from a whole bunch of different perspectives. I'm hopeful, but I'm also concerned, because there was moments in this gathering last week where, one of the guys at Avishtar was like, well, we used to invest in women, but then we started investing bigger dollar amounts, and then, we couldn't invest in women. It's like, oh, for the love of God. Like, why is the only way you're thinking about investing in women is whether or not the leadership of the company is women? Point one. Really, let's just get a broader imagination about this. So the first way to think about imagination is really, and I think Jackie's point brought this home, is about the materiality. We have to think about more ways that these two massive systems intersect. One is a system of gender, which is complex and multifaceted and intersectional and all kinds of other things. And we have to keep that big. And then we have to know that that's intersecting with this massive, complex system of finance. So when people say, well, just tell me what gender lens investing is, really simply, I'm all with Jackie for the concrete, but let's not make it concrete in such a way that we become a very small Venn diagram of where those two might intersect, right? Because the more we make that small, the smaller our imagination. So I was listening to a panel by a fund manager who's investing in Southeast Asia right now, and the fund is developing a gender lens. And I asked him on the panel, where have you gotten risk wrong in Southeast Asia? Where have you miscalculated risk? And he gave me an answer about political risk and being able to see when a regulatory flip is going to happen in a country that's going to take out the investment they just made. So I invested in a country, the regulations changed, the investment is now irrelevant. So I walked away and I was like, okay, let's work together on a way to have a gender lens on regulatory risk. How could we actually look at all of the experience in gender-based budgeting and the ways in which women's organizations within those countries would be able to tell you where things were headed? Why aren't we having that conversation? And so that even in something as arcane as regulatory risk, we can understand that how regulations change is a reflection of how gender patterns change. All right, well, that was that's not maybe the most direct one, but the question is, how do we keep pushing our imagination of how we can think about the materiality of gender patterns in finance? The second piece, though, is to think about the future of gender. The other piece where I think we lose our imagination is gender is seen as static and fixed and not fluid in all kinds of ways, including a different picture of the future. I think what's happened in the last couple months at some basic level is norms about sexual harassment changed. Practices in companies didn't change. The cultural tolerance of a norm that you can grab a woman's breast whenever you want to naked at work is fine, right? But where were the people in Wall Street who were paying attention to the potential that that norm might change, right? And where are we paying attention to the future of gender, not just what it is right now? We all know that it's changed over the past, and I think we're in the midst of massive changes. But how can we predict out to the future and make a bet about what changes are possible? So the second piece is, to be able to have a broader imagination, we need to get better at invitation. We've been working to be able to imagine a future of gender. We better be able to talk to people who know something about that. And people hear me talk about this a lot. It's really the focus of Criterion Institute right now. So one of the things we're passionate about is, how do we make sure that we're building the field of gender lens investing with experts in gender at the table? Full stop. The people who know how to do a complex gender analysis, the people who can actually look at complex systems and not just count how many women are in the room, but be able to think about the changing patterns within gender norms. So I'd been working for a long time, about a year, not that long, but we had been working for about a year, funded by the Australian government to teach a bunch of Australian accelerators, impact investing intermediaries, about using a gender lens in the Pacific. We had done nothing to teach the women leaders in the Pacific to think about finance. So I had one of the best experiences in my professional career, showing up with 15 women leaders in Samoa, Vanuatu, and Fiji to spend 3 days thinking about how to use finance as a tool to address gender-based violence. And what they got to as an imagination is, what if in 15 years, gender-based violence, which is at epidemic proportions in that region, what if in 15 years it was cut in half? How would that change how we understand the risks in our economy now? How do we take a picture of a different future and then say, what is material now for the absence of that future? And the IFC and all kinds of other players are sort of getting on board with this piece. So both thinking about a broader imagination about materiality, but also a broader invitation for how we can use finance as a tool for social change. Which gets to the third piece. And this, I think, I'm echoing. I love going after Jackie. Isn't she amazing? Just wow. I'm always the complicated one. She makes sense, and then Joy talks. It's been an amazing partnership over the years. It's always like, what's the comment? Jackie clears things up and like makes it all sort of, makes sense, and then I make people's brains hurt. So it's a yin-yang thing. So part of the challenge that we've had is in pushing the imagination, in pushing the invitation. How do we really show how finance can be a tool for social change? How do we demonstrate that that is possible? So Criterion has made a commitment to take about a third of our overall effort and focus towards using finance as a tool to address gender-based violence. And for us, this feels like a moment where we can put a stake in the ground and say, it's possible. And where do we start? So we've been aggregating intent. This is the same thing that we all did early on in the field, but I think we need to keep doing it. We aggregate a set of intent that says, if you can build something that allows me to invest to affect gender-based violence, I'm game to do it. And so we got our first $1 billion pension fund signed up last week, and a lot more since then. So a kind of signaling to the moving towards $1 trillion that's moving, right? So we have to keep looking broadly. What are all of the ways that we look at 1 in 3 women on the planet are affected by gender-based violence? There is no company where that is not material. There is no investment where that is not material. We just haven't figured it out. But the only way we're going to figure it out is to actually bring in, to invite actively the long-distance runners who have been working on gender-based violence because they know what we're talking about, and then partner with the amazing investment community that's been built out of here to figure out how do we actually build the products and the opportunities. So my final point is I think we're at a stage now where we need to never apologize, but simply assume our power. It's the moment.